Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Soup Kitchen. It's Gav and you join us ahead of the Watford game nice and early this week. We're just dying to talk about Sunderland again. We've got the Watford game at the weekend in the Championship. Sunderland looking to try and overtake West Brom at the top of the table. We'll see how that goes. Watford, a fine opponent who've been in different form recently, so this one should be interesting. I'm joined by Chris to chat all about it. Hi, mate.
Yes, all right, mate. Yes, it feels like 2 minutes ago since we stopped talking about our Boro win. Feels like we're just carried straight on to talk about Watford.
That's how keen we are. We were literally straight. I walked through the front door on Saturday and we were like, let's record. And then we're nice and early with this one again. But like I said, these are a decent side who've tailed off a little bit in recent games. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. I did stick before we recorded, I stuck a Watford podcast on and listened to it. Was a sort of like a fan reaction at full time type thing. And their fans were very much of the opinion, well, this has probably been coming, this kind of defeat, because they got battered by Norwich on Saturday 4-1. Watched the game back, playing a really high line, got done over the top twice, got done on the counter once. Like I say, I don't know, they're an interesting team, Watford, because at the very start of the season, I listened to all the EFL podcasts and I think it was Not the Top 20. They had Watford bottom of the league. They were convinced they were going to have a stinker, and then they had a really good start. Won their first three, I think. But they have tailed off a little bit recently, so it is interesting. I'm not sure how this one's going to go, but we've got to be confident, haven't we, because of the way we've played this season. Yeah, we've had that stinker at Plymouth, but you like to think it's just a blip and we can carry on that momentum we've brought forward from the Boro win and take it to Watford, but I wouldn't be taking them lightly, put it that way.
No, well, Watford, I mean, you just don't know what to get, do you? I mean, Watford are that team where you just haven't got a clue what's going on from season to season. And then you don't know who's playing for them. They just seem to churn through players, churn through managers. I mean, I was looking on the managers thing because, I mean, it's always the thing with Watford. But I was looking at that, and since, I mean, roughly a year, so going back to October 2021, so that's 3 years, they've had 7 managers in 3 years. I mean, and I was looking...
It's just a shame that, doesn't it?
Cleverly he's on his way. I think he's only got a month or 5 weeks left, and then he's the most long-standing manager this decade for Watford, and we're kind of halfway through. I think like the average tenure for a Watford manager is about 4 months, because you had 3 months, 4 months, 4 months, 6 months, 2 months. And Cleverly's been there for about 6 months. So, going off that, he hasn't got long left, really. And then, but like you said, August came out the traps, won the first 3 of the season. And then September, they've just fallen to bits. They've had 2 home wins in the Cup as well against MK Dons and Plymouth. And then we'll come on to their midweek Cup exploits as well. And that's an interesting one, but we'll come on to that in a minute. But, even though they haven't won a game, they've only taken 1 point from 9 in September. They're still unbeaten at home. So when you're talking about kind of taking them lightly, yes, they got done at Norwich. And actually, I don't know if you noticed, but see Callum Doyle's 25-yard strike.
I did, yeah.
Wasn't bad.
Playing left back for Norwich.
He's never been a left back. But anyway.
No.
Even though that they're saying like they've had 2 home games and 1 at home, the Coventry game, and I was looking at the stats for that one, their last home game actually against Coventry, and that looked pretty even. So it wasn't like
it was end to end. I seen a bit of that game and they were just back and forth. But Coventry haven't had a great start either, so I don't know if that's a good point considering Watford were at home.
Yeah, but they'll be full of confidence because I mean stuffing Stoke 3-0 at home, then beating Derby. And then you say that Coventry game could have went either way. So yes, they look like a side. I mean, the last couple of seasons they finished 11th and 15th, and you'd expect probably. I mean, I think they went a bit over the top saying they were going to end up bottom. I think probably another season of the same mid-table. I think that's where they'll probably be. I mean, with Cleverly being in there, it doesn't look like he's kind of pulling up any trees. I don't think they're going to be contenders to the top 6, but it looks like at the minute, they've played 3 away from home and lost 2 of those. So it looks like they're going to rely on their home form and they need the points at home. So yes, I think we should go there with confidence, like you said, but it's one of them if their kind of tails are up at home and that's where their form is and that's where they expect to pick up the points. I don't think it's going to be easy.
No, they're a decent team still. I agree with you. I don't think the predictions for them to finish bottom were accurate. I just didn't get it. I know they're a basket case and look, it seems to have worked for large chunks of the last decade or so for Watford. because they've been promoted despite the crazy way that they choose to just deal with coaches and players. Like, it shouldn't work, the amount of turnover they have, but it seems to have served them pretty well. But then the last couple of years, if you just said, they've been pretty underwhelming. I mean, I remember that first season we were back in the Championship. That was the season they came back down, wasn't it? And they were very underwhelming. And that we went to Watford and drew 2s each. I think you remember Dewey scored a last-minute equaliser, didn't he? It's one of those clubs where you basically said at the top, you just don't know what to expect from them ever, because they're just so unpredictable. They're just, like, for Sunderland, you know what we stand for. I think you could pretty much ask a fan of every club in the Championship, what does Sunderland stand for? What are they about? And they would say, young team, progressive, academy-centric, play decent football, all these sort of things would come out. With Watford, I'm just like, I don't know. I barely know who any of the players are. Till you said Tom Cleverley was the manager, I probably would have to rack my brains to work out who was in charge of them. But they've been like, doesn't it feel like they've been like that for as long as you can remember? Like, I can't remember a time when they weren't that haphazard. But I think as well, some of the recruitment they did over the summer wasn't too bad. Musa Sissoko, I know he's quite old now, but that's a good signing for the Championship, I think. Bit of experience, and he's still getting about and doing it. Saw him score a couple of goals. The signing of Ogbonna from West Ham, again, another player who's probably over the hill a bit, but same time experienced. I don't think you get relegated with them players, even though they're older. I think that kind of experience will serve them well over the season. I just don't look at Watford and think they're a massively threatening team. But I did think that about Plymouth too. And look what happened. So I'm really struggling to put my finger on where this game actually goes, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But a very unpredictable outfit, and always have been for as long as I can remember.
Well, yeah, but for long periods it worked. You know, like if you look, they've been in the Premier League for 6 out of the last 9 seasons. So, I mean, people saying that, there's Watford churning through managers again. I've just said it. Immediately when I think Watford, I just think of sacking managers and getting random ones in. But for a long time, it kind of worked. It kept them in the Premier League for a few seasons. And, it looked like they were going to become fairly established in the Premier League at one point. But it just kind of fell apart. But it did work for about 4 or 5 years, and they were that Premier League side. But the thing is with Cleverley, and again, I mean, Gav, we talk about like the Sunderland, call it the model or whatever you want to call it. But we're talking about looking at coaches who we've been watching and can come in to like coach our young side and all this sort of stuff. But I mean, to me, I don't know about you, but I think the appointment of Cleverley, because if you look, he finished playing at the end of the 2022-23 season in that July 2023. Then he was appointed under-18s coach. And then it was like 8 months later, he's suddenly manager of the club. And it's one of these where it's like, is it one of them where he wins a few games and it's like, we'll just give him the job. It's an easy one. Rather than thinking, where do we want the club to go? Who do we want to kind of run this, like what we're doing, this philosophy, this plan that we've got for the next 2, 3, 4 years? It still doesn't feel like that. I mean, he's a young manager. You can look at the likes of Michael Carrick and who's done well at Boro and stuff like that. But Michael Carrick he had more of a, he was at Man United on the bench for quite a while, and he was working with those top managers on there, so he was learning. Whereas it just seems like Cleverley's when under 18s, I've found myself as interim manager, and now I've been given the job because I've getting a few points. It just smacks of one of them where at some point it's going to go wrong. Would you be surprised if they were 14th, 15th at Christmas and he got the sack and they got someone else he got some kind of random foreign name who hasn't been there? Because they've tried loads of different directions. They're coming back to when they're in the Premier League, Ranieri, Hodgson, which was smacked to desperation. Then they thought Rob Edwards was going to do the job, and then they brought Bilic in, and then they had Chris Wilder, and then they had Ismail who came in, and he was only there for kind of 6 months or something like that. Chris Wilder was there for 3 months. I mean, there's not a plan. And when you look at a club like that, I just end up so relieved that we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, they're kind of the opposite of us, aren't they, in many respects at the minute. And like you say, though, it's always confused me that it's worked for Watford. I don't get it.
Yep.
It shouldn't work, and it has. Maybe we're now seeing the tail end of that, where it's not working anymore. It'll be interesting to see how they do end up. I think I didn't agree with it, but it is interesting that people who pay close attention to everything that goes on in the Championship, thought that they would struggle this year. That is interesting.
Maybe that was because of Cleverley, that appointment.
Yeah, I think it possibly was. It was a bit out of the blue and a bit, he's already in the club and he's not going to cost anything type thing, wasn't it? Yeah. But look, it again, like I say, they're an interesting opponent and I certainly wouldn't be taking them lightly. But like I said before, I listened to a little bit of a Watford podcast after the game at the weekend, obviously emotionally charged because of just being battered. But it was interesting to me that they were talking about how the midfield just didn't press whatsoever. And in particular, they were talking about Kenny McLean, the Norwich midfielder, just literally sitting with the ball in the middle of the park under no pressure, spraying it around. And if you watch the highlights back, 2 of the goals are just long balls over the top of a really high line, which get them in behind. Which I don't know, would that suit us, letting us have the ball? Because it didn't against Plymouth. It's the only time, Plymouth is the only game this season where we've had more of the ball and then we've got beat. And I don't know whether Watford are typically like that or whether it was just a bad day for them because they were away from home. You know, Norwich are a decent team. They've had a bit of a stuttering start, but they're a decent team. But I don't know. I don't know whether that would suit us necessarily because when I watch us, I think we look loads better when we've got teams coming onto us. But I guess part of my mentality here is that Watford being the home team, trying to turn around a little spell of bad form, they're going to be expected to get on the ball. I don't see them setting up in a way where they're just like, okay, Sunderland, you have it. I can't see that happening. I think they're going to have to have the ball. And that obviously will suit us. Basically, this is a weird scenario because we're playing a team who probably just need to win to get out of the little rut they're in. And ordinarily, I think they probably would be like, okay, well, look what happened when they played Plymouth. They had majority of the ball. It didn't suit them. Plymouth broke against them, etc., etc. But I just think, you know what it's like when you're the home team and you haven't won in a couple of games. 20, 25 minutes into the match, if you're not on the ball, fans start getting restless and it does affect the performance. So I'm really, really interested to see how they set up, actually. I know how we're going to set up, but I'm really interested to see what they do.
Well, I know what you meant about the possession, but I saw the goals as well for that game against Norwich, and I was loving the amount of space in behind their back line. And I tell you what, and you're saying that, you know, talking about the Plymouth game, and I said the same, that if I was lining up against Sunderland at the minute, I'd let us have the ball. I'd let us have the ball and I'd sit in. But I think Watford only do one of those. From what I saw against Norwich, they let them have the ball, but at the same time, they kind of left a load of space in behind, and we're going to love that. I mean, I think it was Sheffield Wednesday when we did that quite a lot, when we broke quickly and we ended up getting in behind their back line with a ball over the top or ball out wide, and then we got a quick cross across the box. I think it was the last goal that was a bit like that, where we broke down the left-hand side. But if we keep doing that and there's that amount of space in behind, I think we'll be lapping that up. I think we'll be seeing how they play. But I'd be amazed if they're set up like that. And I mean, we're talking about as well preparing for the game. I mean, obviously that they're playing in the League Cup away to Man City. I mean, we're talking before that game. But if you were Tom Cleverley, you know, you've just been beaten 4-1 away by Norwich City. You've got Sunderland at home at the weekend, and you've got Man City away in the League Cup. I mean, if I was him, I'd be tempted. I don't know about you. I'd be tempted to play the kids. I wouldn't. I'd probably change all 11, because what's the point? Are you going to chase the ball for 90 minutes against Man City for no reason? Or are you gonna go for an upset?
It's a lose-lose situation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because he plays his best team, they'll get battered. Well, I'm saying this now. Watch Watford win the game. But let result aside, okay, you play your best team, they're going to get the arse run off them. They're away to Man City. Yeah. Even if they win, right? They're not going to have the ball. So they're going to be running for 90 minutes, just chasing the ball around the pitch. But you do it with your reserves and your backup players, and then you could be on the end of an even bigger hiding, which just really, really kills morale. I don't see how he wins in this situation, because if it was Sunderland, I know what we'd probably do. We'd probably change the majority of the team, maybe keep a handful of the sort of the leaders in the spine of the team. I think you would possibly see Patterson, Neil, 09 play. You know, it'd be, and then the rest would probably be whoever. But I don't know with Watford. I presume they're going to be more focused on us, because you know, as soon as they saw they were drawing Man City away, they'll be thinking, well, we're out the cup then, aren't we? But this is a game they could do without big style. They don't need it. Yeah. They don't need this game. Well, again, I'm saying this. watch them win, but they're not going to get beat or they're going to have a tough night, right? Let's just say a tough night. And then they've got to play us, who are flying, after getting beat 4-1 at the weekend. You wouldn't want to be in their situation here, would you?
No, but this I was thinking about this, about, when we went out the League Cup, and I remember at the time shrugging my shoulders, but there was loads of people being, well, because I don't look, but all the screenshots people were taking on the socials, giving it a bit like that we were crap at, in the League Cup and all this. And I'm always, when a season like this, when we're in the Championship, we haven't got any aspirations of winning the League Cup, or, if we're going to have a cup run, let's do it in the FA Cup, where it's at a time of a season where, you kind of know where you are and you know what you're doing. But the start of the season where you're trying to really get going and getting some momentum, and you play a couple of games, Watford have won 2, Plymouth hammered MK Dons 5-0, you could say that adds to momentum. But at this point, when you're scrambling for a result in the league, and then you have to go to Man City midweek, it's at this point you go, actually, I'm glad we're out of the League Cup. I'm glad we got knocked out early. It ends up just being a hindrance. So yeah, they've got that to take in consideration. It'll be interesting. I'll be looking out to see what Cleverley does, actually, to see how many he pulls out, to see how much running they have to do. Because I think they'll just sack it off. I think it's like, I'll be amazed if he doesn't stick the kids out. But we'll see what happened there. But it's all about the mentality of where they are, because actually if he does that, it shows how desperate they are for a result against us.
Yeah, I noticed that the goalkeeper Backman, he came off early in the game at Norwich. You're on about Callum Doyle's goal. I think the keeper's got to do better. It's straight at him and he flaps it into the back of the net. Well, I searched his name on Twitter and just their fans absolutely sick of him. Get him out of the club. We're sick of the sight of him and all this, that, and the other. Eerily similar to the Plymouth game, in that Plymouth's main goalkeeper got injured before we played them, and the backup's going to have to come in now. Jonathan Bond, who I think's been there a little while. Didn't he play for them when he was a kid? I think he's a lot older now, but I feel like Jonathan Bond was around in like the sort of mid-2000s at Watford. But yeah, so there's going to be a change in the goalkeeper department. They play a back three, which is interesting, because I think we've only played Chef Wed this season who've done that, and we decimated them. And again, that high line they played, it was really weird to me that they were playing such a high line away at Norwich when they were getting beat as well. Like they were 2-1, 3-1 down, they were still playing with a really high line. I think if you've got a high line with a back three, you are susceptible to getting done down the sides. And I was listening again to that podcast and they were talking about bringing in Ogbonna for the game at the weekend against us. And I'm thinking he's 37, 38. And if they play a line that high with somebody like that in the back,
and the pace
we've got Mundle and Mayenda with the pace we've got and Roberts coming across the pitch, this could really suit us. I'm more interested in how they set up than us, because if they set up how they have been, it could be playing into our hands. And if the onus is on them to attack and the onus is on them to get at us, which you would expect it to be given they're the home team and they need a win, I think this could be. Yeah. This could. I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but this could really suit us.
Well, it could. Well, it should if they set up the way they set up at Norwich. But you'd expect them to make changes, and if they watch the way we play, I mean, he hasn't done his homework if he plays, wing backs who push on and they leave their back three exposed and they play a high line. I mean, if they do that, then they're kind of asking for trouble. You expect them to, cleverly to have watched our games and to put a plan in place. That wasn't what they did at Norwich because, Norwich hammered them, and we are being quite negative just because of their form after those first three games. Because obviously, 50% of their games they haven't won, and it's been the last three. But you look at their place in the table at the minute, and they're with all of the pre-season predictions like we've been talking about and fans' expectations. I mean, they're still just outside the playoffs on 10 points. They're only 3 points behind Burnley. If they beat us, it's more than possible because they're at home. And yes, we are flying, but they're the home side and they're expected to come out and win the game. They go within 2 points of us. So they're not kind of, you're not talking disaster. If we're saying, we're flying, and then they beat us and go within 2 points of us, we can't be too negative about them. They're in a decent position in the league. Despite the last three games, we're talking about, current form. And actually, the other thing I was looking at, we haven't actually won at Vicarage Road this century.
Oh dear.
So we haven't, we've played them 6 times this century and we've drawn 4 and lost 2 at Vicarage Road. The last time we won was 1999, won 3-2. Phillips scored 2, Gavin McCann scored the winning goal. And after that game, we went third in the Premier League, which was nice.
Yeah, I think I was there as well. Jesus, that makes us feel old.
No worries, mate.
Anyways, enough about Watford. Is there anything you would do with our team? I'm looking at it now and I can't see where they would make a change. I mean, I know last week we were talking on the back of the Plymouth defeat, thinking, well, Meffin would come in for Ballard, and there's no way you can change that defence after the way Meffin played.
No.
We did skirt with the idea of Isidore coming in at the weekend, but he stuck with Mayenda, and I thought Mayenda had a good game. It's a tough one, isn't it? Like, to see where you would even make changes. I'm looking to the bench. There's nothing really obvious blaring at us there. We've got, I think, this week Alan Brown's been back in training. I think Salis Abdul Samed's been in training, but he hasn't played any football since, I think, last season. So he's going to be a way off, probably not till after the next international break's been over and done with. Yep. So really, I think it's just going to be more of the same from us, isn't it?
It has to be, really, because you would, unless it's tactical, but you would think that it would be pretty harsh if any of those players got pulled out, really, after that performance against Boro. I mean, you had Meffin at the back who came in, and we kind of, Ballard last season, and since he joined's been fantastic, and he's just slotted straight in, and you just thought, well, it's his shirt now, and that's the thing with Mayenda as well, that it's his shirt to kind of lose. And the way he's playing, he's doing nothing wrong. He might not be getting the chances. He might not be the best in the world at holding it up, because what I've seen of Isidore, that he looks really, like his touch and his size, he looks like he's going to be really good at holding the ball up. And I think he was useful in a game like we had against Boro late on, where he's got the strength to hold the ball up and run with it 10, 20 yards. But, early on, and we're talking about the tactics that we're using, and especially if Watford are going to go with this high line, I'd be amazed if Mayenda came out, and there's no real need for him to come out. There's no, we can't say, oh, look, he looks like he's dipping. He's still got that press. He's still kind of that trigger for our press, and he pushes on. And a couple of times against Boro as well, early on he went on that little mazy run, and he dragged the ball up 20, 30 yards, and we got a corner from it. And it's things like that sometimes when you're under pressure, like we were in the early stages against Boro, if you've got someone who can travel with a ball 30 yards and win a free kick, win a corner, win a throw-in, sometimes it means as much as like a really good tackle at the back. It really kind of gets the team out and takes the pressure off. So if he can keep doing that, then I think as far as the manager's concerned, there's no need to change things up. And I can't see any changes in midfield. I can't see Brown just coming back into training and going straight back into the midfield, even though we're away from home. He's not going to. I thought Bellingham was brilliant against Boro. He's not coming out. Rig after that goal, you're not going to hook him after a weekend like that. Dan Neil's the one, and I think I heard Martin talking about it, and I completely agreed actually that Dan Neil, I think will get better this season, but he's the kind of question mark where his form out of the midfield, the players that we've been putting in there, you'd maybe put a question mark and say, how is he playing at the moment? And
could be a big game from this one, couldn't it? Because when I heard the Watford fans talking about how much room they gave McLean at the base of Norwich's midfield, how much space they gave him, if they do the same with Dan Neil, it could suit him, because I think that's when he's at his best, when he's got time on the ball. It's when he's under pressure and he has to think quickly. Sometimes he lets himself down and he makes them silly sort of 20-yard passes which hit an opposition player and stuff. If Watford are going to give him time and space, when I look at their team and I don't see where they don't look like a pressing outfit, so it might suit him. Yeah. I hope so, because I do like Dan Neil. But he hasn't had one game yet this season where I'm like, he was brilliant today. And that's what we're waiting for, aren't we?
Yeah, no, look, on his day, Dan Neil is one of the best midfielders in the Championship. And I fully expect him at some point to step up to the Premier League. If we don't get there, I fully expect a bid to come in and try and take him at some point. He's going to be he is a fantastic player, and he's only going to get better. But his form at the start of this season, we all know he can play better. And there was a couple of stray passes against Boro as well, just like you've just described, exactly that. It was like, seem to try and play the harder pass sometimes instead of the simpler one, and he just needs to go back to basics a bit and then get his form back and get his confidence back, and then try those worldies and get his form back that way. But and I'm kind of clutching at straws though, because I fully expect it to be the same 11. I don't expect him to make changes, but when we're talking about Dan Neil, like I said, clutching at straws from if he made a change. But what do you reckon? Because I can't see him making a change.
Nah, I think it's got to be the same team. I don't see any need to change it, to be honest. And I think I said this the other week on one of the pods, but given, just look all the way back to the first game of pre-season, he hasn't changed the team that much at all. It's virtually the same 11 players that were starting in that game at Shields, give or take one or two. He only makes changes when there's a need to, like injuries or what have you, but it's because we've started so well, you know. Like, for a manager, it must be the best situation ever, because when you've got players knocking on your door going, I want to play, I want to play, I want to start. It's like, well, how can I drop any of these? They're winning, you know?
But, and I put it in the preview before the game against Boro, that actually I think the change he made in the back four last week showed him, actually, I think he can be a bit ruthless when he wants to be.
Yeah, the only thing I think with that was maybe if Ballard hadn't trained all week, and we talked about this on the pod, and that with Ballard being, because he was clearly injured, he mustn't have trained for most of the week. It probably made that decision easier for him. But I do agree. I think he still had a choice to make, because Ballard could have played and he didn't. So yeah, you know, I think it'll be more interesting to see how he rotate, because he'll have to rotate once we start playing 3 games a week, as we keep talking about, you know. But this one, there's no need to change anything. Where do you see the game going then? I know we've talked a little bit about this, but I can't put my finger on it. To be honest,
it's a heart and head thing at the minute, because part of his. He's getting a little bit. I feel a bit like sometimes when you get a bit carried away. Like I feel a bit like that, where I actually, part of me thinks we can go to Watford and wipe the floor with them, but my head's kind of saying, you know, pulling us back and looking at the league and thinking actually they've got, you know, they haven't been beaten at home this season. My head's going 1-1 draw. A little bit of my heart's going, God, we can go there and smash them. But I'm going to stick with my head, and I think I'm veering more towards a score draw.
I think 2-0 to us. Oof. I do. I'd
like to see that.
Other than that Plymouth game, we went there and scored twice and got beat. So it wasn't like, and all 3 goals were defensive mistakes. And Ballard was at fault for 2 of them, and he's not going to be playing in this game. So, and look how much more solid we looked on Saturday. You know what I mean? For 5 out of the 6 games this season, we've barely conceded a shot, never mind a chance.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just don't see. I don't think Watford have got enough about them. Like, at least Plymouth, I knew they had 2 good wingers, and Ryan Hardy's scored goals at this level. So we knew, like, Plymouth will probably be saved by the fact they've got 3 decent attackers, whereas Watford, I'm not so sure about them. They've been starting Daniel Jebison up front, and
I saw that.
He's not done it. He's not really hit the ground running anywhere yet. He's not scored goals. I think he 7 goals on loan at Burton 3 seasons ago. He'll probably score now, I've said that. But he's a player who I think people are waiting to get going at some point.
Yeah. Well,
and it's like, I just don't look at them and think, oh, well, they're going to absolutely batter Patterson's goal. I can't see it.
Well, I noticed,
I might be wrong.
I noticed Tom Ince was on the bench for them as well, who, you know, like for about 10 years, it seems like Tom Ince has been coming, he's had potential and he's coming through.
Aye. He's 33 in January, by the way.
Yeah, he seemed to have been around forever, doesn't he? Just knocking about the Championship.
It's been a bit of a weird one, but yeah, they've got a few players like that who I think have been round the doors. Like I mentioned Sissoko, Ogbonna. I don't think they're not going to be in trouble. I think it's just we might be playing them at a good time. I think that's what's making me a bit more confident about this one.
Well, you look at their players though, but you know, like I said earlier, 6 out of the last 9 seasons in the Premier League, that should give you a lot of good players that you've signed in the Premier League still at your club, and you should have plenty of money in the coffers to be able to rebuild. I mean, you looked at last season how the 3 came down and bounced straight back up because they were selling players for 25 million, 50 million, all of those, and they bounced straight back up. And then, you know, you look at Watford and they've just had such a big churn of players, especially the last couple of years, that they should have come down with a really good squad that should have blitzed the Championship, but it's never happened. And now, the longer you're in the Championship, the longer you get stuck with Championship players, and then you struggle to get out of it on the 3rd season this season. You wouldn't be surprised if Watford were in the Championship for 6, 7, 8 seasons now.
Yeah. They haven't replaced good players who've gone.
No.
I mean, it's difficult to like João Pedro's went to Brighton and scored for fun in the Premier League, and I think they lost Yasser Asprilla over the summer, who went to Girona in Spain. They paid a club record fee for him. Yeah. They've lost some decent players.
And their player of the year last season, the Dutch defender, he went to Saudi, I think.
Yeah, so they've lost a lot of good players, and they just haven't been able to replace them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see how it goes. I'm pretty confident though. I think we might just be playing these at the right time. Fingers crossed. me confidence is warranted this time, because normally, like I say, I get a bit too overconfident, and like I did possibly before Plymouth, and that is at the back of my mind. I'm like, oh, I felt really confident going to Plymouth and we got beat, but I do think we're going to win. Before we go, we haven't really mentioned this. Well, we haven't mentioned this at all, but the signing of Aaron Connolly, we've got to talk about that before we leave.
Yeah.
Didn't really come out of the blue per se, because it was rumoured last week. And then, yeah, it's happening. It's happened possibly if you listen to this on Thursday or Friday. But Aaron Connolly signing for Sunderland. He's a 24-year-old Republic of Ireland international who spent 5 years at Brighton, was on loan at Hull and then signed permanently for Hull last season. Scored 8 goals in the Championship last season, which is more than all of our strikers combined. And I think I read it was 27 or 28 games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to make of this. I feel like, all of the things we've heard about Connolly being a bit troublesome off the pitch, loving the lifestyle a bit too much, I feel like that's what is giving me bad vibes about this signing. But at the same time, I do trust our recruitment to have done their homework on him. And I mean, this could be another sort of Clarke and Roberts type signing where we rescue someone from a bad couple of years and rehabilitate them and turn them into a decent player. It could also be another kind of Bradley Dack where you just don't see him play very much and he leaves next year. So an interesting signing. I'm not sure if we need him, but I'm not totally against it. I think if you can get the version of Aaron Connolly who was scoring for Hull last season and playing well in the Premier League for Brighton maybe 4 or 5 years ago, then he might be a decent signing for us. But interesting, isn't it? Because we signed Abdullahi on deadline day and then it was revealed he needed surgery. I think this possibly points to the fact that we're maybe writing him off for a little while and that we do need somebody just as cover for Mayenda and Isidore.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it looks like another one of those fixes that we do on a player who needs a move and needs a home and needs someone to, tell him he's a good player and tell him he's wanted and get a few games. I mean, like you said, Hull City last season, 1-3, and he seemed to do okay. But then, 1-3 at Hull and then Hull release him. And then you think, well, if he was that good, then why did they release him and what was going on and, what was he like on the training ground and what was his attitude like? But he knows now, look, he's had that many moves since coming through at Brighton where he clearly just thought, well, I've made it. And then it kind of tailed off at Brighton and then loan moves, Luton, Boro, he went to Italy and then Hull. And then that was his permanent move from Brighton. Like, you would like to think, I want to say kind of this might be his last chance, but you know what football's like, it's probably not his last chance. But it might be at this level because after, if he doesn't make it with us, you might be looking at his next move down into League One. Mm-hmm. And if he wants to move in the right direction, because theoretically he could say, well, I'm moving to Sunderland. And I saw an interview with him last year, I think it was, when he talked about how brilliant it was breaking through in the Premier League with Brighton and that he wants to get back there. In theory, next year, if he really pushes himself at Sunderland and we do really well and manage to get promoted, he could be a Premier League player with Sunderland or a bit of a failure in the Championship and a League One player and looking for League One clubs. I mean, that's a massive difference. That that he's got that to be that's what's on his plate for the next year. That like this season, that's the difference next season. So he's got that to play for. And with the young lads we've got, with the attitude some of them have got, we would not bring players into the club whose attitude will stink the place out. We just won't do that. There's no need for us to do that. And I imagine the contract that he signed, if he does start playing up and does start stinking the place out, I imagine we'll be able to just cut his contract off. And I reckon that's the way we've signed him, where it's like, yeah, you've come in. If you start misbehaving, look, you're out, and we can just rip up your contract, and that's that. And like you say, we'll see when it comes through, because we're still talking before it's all been announced, and we haven't seen the scarf pick yet, but we'll believe it might be incoming. But we'll see what contract he signed, because you wouldn't be surprised if it's until January. But it'll be interesting to see how long we've signed him for.
Yeah, I think from his perspective, Sunderland is the biggest club he's played for to date. He's got a bit of a list of clubs there.
Yeah.
And Brighton are obviously a successful Premier League club, but they're not bigger than us. Biggest club he'll ever play for. If he blows it, it's on him.
Yeah.
It's totally on him. Like, whilst I'm a little bit sceptical about it, part of us thinks, we're in a no-lose situation, really.
Yeah.
Because if he's shit, we'll just bin him.
Yeah.
We just get rid of him.
Yeah.
It's easy as that, isn't it? But if he's good, playing in a decent team who, from an attacking perspective, creating a lot of chances, this could be the fresh start he needs. And I hope he recognises that. Because I think you're bang on. Like, if he blows it at Sunderland, nobody's going to want to go anywhere near him. So, and he'll end up in League One, and that'll be his career sort of tailing off.
Yeah.
So I think it's a huge opportunity for him. For us, it's a bit of a free hit.
Yep.
You know, he's not going to be expected to come straight in and perform. He's going to have to get fit for starters because, you know, he's missed out on that. Well, it's been 3 months maybe since pre-season started. So he's had none of that. He's got to get himself fit. He's got to get himself available. And this might be one where we've looked at his age and looked at his profile and seen what he's done already in his career and thought we might be able to get something out of this kid. Because it's not like he's 27, 28-year-old. He's 24.
Yeah.
Still young, really. I mean, by our team standards, he's a pensioner, like, but he's still fairly young, and he's got the best years ahead of him if he wants him to be ahead of him. We've been pretty relaxed with the whole striker thing. My end of starting the season well has been obviously good for us, but it has allowed us to relax a little bit. And then we've obviously been studying the free agent market. He's still available. Presume he'll have had other offers as well, by the way. I think he's maybe took his time. And we've thought, you know, there's not much to lose with this. If we can get a tune out of this kid, he could end up firing us to the Premier League. That's what everybody wants ultimately.
Yeah, and then, you know, he's on a big contract next season if he does well, and he's a Premier League player. So his whole career now, you know, like you said, yeah, you're absolutely right. The motivation is there for him. If he wants to kickstart his career, he's got a great opportunity now for the rest of the season. I just hope, in some ways, because I was looking forward to Watson coming in and getting more opportunities this season. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see when he gets fit and how we use him, who he comes in for. But we've been talking about having a strong squad and how great it is. And that's what we've done. We've strengthened the squad, and you can't really complain with that. No.
Well, we'll see how it goes with him. Fingers crossed he's turned over a new leaf and he's taken it seriously. And I mean, we did an interview with Hull fan for the website, which people can check out. And they were pretty upbeat on him, actually, saying he's a decent player. He just struggles to stay fit. But if he's had a bit of time out and he's looking after himself a bit better, and I agree with you, the club wouldn't have signed him if there was any risk here that he was going to be a problem or that he was coming in 2 stone overweight or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like we're signing bloody, like when people were giving Gaza chances after he'd already seen his best days, and people were hoping, well, you know, you get Gaza fit, he might be an asset to us. It's a bit different. It's Aaron Connolly, so you know, he's a good player. I'm sure he's going to come in and work hard, at least initially, because that was certainly the indication we were given from Hull, that when he actually signed for Hull, he was really fit and he was in a good place mentally and things like that. Hopefully we're getting that version of him, and risk-free. Let's see how it goes. But we'll be back after Watford with a podcast. We've also got a Twitter space on Friday night, starting at 8 o'clock over on the Roker Report Twitter page. Make sure you catch up with that. It's a bit like a podcast, except it's live, and you can join in as well and give your views, and you'll hear some different voices. I'm sometimes on it walking my dogs out and about. There's no restriction on where you join from, as long as you've got a stable internet connection. So yeah, make sure you catch up with that as well. Everything on rotereport.sbnation.com this week as well. Make sure you catch up with that. Cheers, Chris. Thanks, mate.
No worries.
Cheers to listeners. We'll catch you after the Watford game. Hopefully talking about a win.